also the back attacks. I noticed that, oh my God, man, the back attacks. When we were doing MMA together and all that, we had very strong control. Like John was always about control, 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 control. But we were not as good finishers as the DDS, obviously, because they were focusing on finishing so much more than us, and we were focused more on takedowns and striking, and then control on the ground, of course. But there was a leap forward in back control and back finishes as well. Like, I mean, look, I've trained with Gordon. There's nothing you can do to stop his back attack. Like, I feel like there's nothing you can do. And trapping the arm, putting the triangle on top, all these things, these new subtleties you guys added over, like seemingly in a year or so, like overnight almost, it felt.
Actually, it was longer than that. My interest in back control came from when you and I were preparing George to fight BJ Penn.
Yeah.
I was looking at video of BJ Penn in preparation. My main job I was George's grappling coach. For us, would organize the camp overall. He was the head coach, and he would delegate responsibility to individual coaches for specialized areas. So for us, ran the program, and then would say, John, we've got problems here, here, and here in grappling, and I would research and give answers, and other coaches would assist in similar ways. When I studied BJ Penn, it was becoming clear that he had a very good back control for that time. It was one of the strongest parts of his game, and my biggest fear is that George would end up in bottom position and end up exposing his back to BJ Penn, and BJ had a very high finishing rate.
That was the one way he could finish anybody.
Yeah, and I noticed in several notable occasions, BJ would use his very impressive flexibility to pass a foot over his opponent's arm and trap it, and then it would aid in the strangle.
Yeah.
Now, when I looked at this, it was clear that BJ had extraordinary levels of hip flexibility, and he could reflexively, without any effort, just take his foot and hook it over his training partner's arm from almost any position, and strangle them. So this to me was fascinating, and I played around with it on the mats and with my students of the time, and it became clear that I'm a person of very average flexibility, and I could not do it in the same way that BJ was doing it. And so I devised a series of simple hand traps. Then I started to realize the key to hand trapping was to take an opponent's arm and bring it below the line of their pectorals, like so. And that hand traps, BJ could do it when the hand was above because of his extraordinary flexibility. But for people of average flexibility, the hand had to be brought below the line of the pectorals. And the best way of doing this was not what most people were doing at that time, which was straight hand grips, but rather cross hand grips, and ultimately leading to a hand position known as double cross, which fed into some very, very strong hand controls, which greatly increased the number of strangles taken from back position. I'm sure many people watching this podcast have had the frustrating experience of getting behind someone, getting two hooks in, maybe even locking a body triangle, and you just can't break through your opponent's defensive hands. The guys are just constantly clawing at your hands, and you can't get through and strangle people. Our whole thing was never be satisfied with the back pin by itself, but rather ruthlessly seek to pin your opponent's arms into a position where they cannot form effective defenses. Gordon proved to be extraordinarily adept at this. It was one of the great strong points of his game. All of my students were good at it, but Gordon in particular was very, very strong at it.
And none against one, as you say.
Yes.
You got to get all his, he has no more defenses, and you have still one attack left. It's a brilliant system. Actually, you go over it on BJJ Fanatics, correct? On your back attack video. It's a brilliant system, but it was a major leap forward because at that time we were all just trying to kind of fight the hands and just throw your arm in there and squeeze. And
there were other people too, like Marcelo Garcia would often use a foot, but it was done more intuitively.
There wasn't a system.
There was an opportunity, and he would throw a foot in and catch it, and had success.
He interestingly has an MMA fight where he was on the back of his opponent for like, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes and couldn't get the choke sunk. But also it's MMA, it's much harder because the glove creates an obstruction. And BJ's system of wrapping that arm, the way he did it was incredible, because once that arm is there, you're either going to spin into a triangle, which what happened kind of with Matt Hughes. even though Matt Hughes got out of it later, or because you guys were very strong also on putting the triangle up on the neck
That's
early
correct,
on,
yeah.
much earlier. Like now today, you see it much more often in jiu-jitsu, but you guys really made that trend popular because getting the I remember actually Gordon coming in at Tristar when he was just a purple belt, and he was showing it to us, and I was like, man, how are you going to get your legs up there? He was doing it actually from side control, from half guard, from back. He was putting the triangle up on the upper body facing the opposite way. So let's say I have your back and I put you in a triangle and I'm still on your back. And it's funny, I was just watching his match the other day, I think with I can't remember who it was, but he did it. He did exactly what he showed me 10 years ago, and it's a recent match that he did. And it's just incredible how good you guys got at putting the triangle in a way that wasn't done in jiu-jitsu typically. It was never done that way.
Most people, when they think of the triangle, think of the front triangle.
Yeah, face to face.
They miss the fact that there's 4 other kinds of triangle which are just as good. And
they're better because they're less known. Actually, it's incredible. I find that the leaps you guys made, and it was really, and that's why my favorite martial arts team ever is DDS. Like I love